Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to announce this panel and to moderate it. It's such a pleasure to be here with both Sherisa and Emmanuel. Thank you a lot for participating. Thanks a lot, Sherisa. Emmanuel, thanks a lot as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Emma.
Let's start maybe by introducing yourselves to the listeners. I've been online for quite a few times now, but I will still do a brief introduction after you get going. So Sherisa, maybe should we start by you?
Okay, sure, thank you. My name is Sherisa Rajah. I'm an employment lawyer and I specialize in employment law across Middle East Africa. The reason I'm involved in this is because I've been doing a lot of future of work restructures and rollouts for workplaces, and I think that it's very possible, regardless of static laws of socioeconomic issues, to drive an agile workplace that would accommodate all 5 generations, retain skills, and optimize what you already have in the workplace.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Sherisa. Such a challenge, these days. Emmanuel, on your side?
Okay, so my name is Emmanuel Michael. I'm currently the head of human capital at Letshego, Nigeria. So what I do at Letshego is basically to manage the people processes for the country. I'm passionate about this topic about the future of work because the way things are going right now is such that everything is being automated and digitalization is taking over. And people are scared to find out how will I become relevant in this scheme of things. And so this has led me to start paying serious attention to the future of what the kind of skills that one will need to have to be able to play and become relevant, and how do we also help the organization to grow. So that's just a brief about me.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Emmanuel. So a little bit about myself. My name is Emma, and I'm the founder of OneCircleHR.com. We just started our live testing a few weeks ago, and it's basically in the heart of what we are discussing today. It's bringing in a new way of working for HR professionals and HR consultants globally. And it's basically connecting businesses with HR consultants in a freelance manner, virtually and completely on demand and on project basis. So I think I'm really lucky to be on this panel together with you guys. It's a subject that we are all passionate about. I know, Sherisa, I've seen you online, and I've we've been together on a lot of panels as well locally. There was just an article as well that you wrote around this particular subject. Emmanuel as well. A lot of activities globally, and then you are as well trying to raise awareness when it comes to the future of work in Africa. So let's start up our discussions. As you said, Emmanuel, there's a lot of talk about the future of work, and it just comes with its ambiguities as well. And we know that it's bringing such a big change, and it's shifting the way that we work and all the workplace trends. So there's a lot of talk about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, the fourth Industrial Revolution, a lot of talk about robotics, VR, Internet of Things, AI, and all of those have great implications on the workplace, but they also bring in a lot of new opportunities. And I believe one of the things, and I was just saying the same thing yesterday on the panel that was related to work in Africa, that this is such a live example of what is happening today. We are on a panel that is global, and there's thousands of people are watching it in real time, and so it's bringing in a new dimension of what it means to connect and to collaborate and to exchange, and it's democratizing access to learning and to talent and to knowledge. So having said that, if we bring this discussion back into the future of work and into HR specifically, and so Sherisa, from your expertise connecting from a labor law perspective as well, and with all of the CHROs, etc., and Emmanuel, you're in the heart of it. So how is the CHRO in Africa or in the African countries taking charge of future-proofing the organization and the workforce? Because given everything that we spoke about, it's not easy. There's a lot of ambiguity. But what is being done in order to lead this? Would you like to start, maybe Sherisa? Would you like to start on your side?
Okay, sure. So in my jurisdictions, particularly if we focus on Africa, because I know there was already a Middle East panel, so I'll focus on the African landscape. The first very important point is, whilst we have a number of socioeconomic issues, we have thriving multinationals. I myself in my own practice service at least 22 multinationals on a day-to-day basis, and they all have presence and operations in the rest of Africa. Our continent is the only continent that has not inhibited the gig economy. Now, we've just seen out of Canada, Ontario, Canada, that gig workers, subject to very specific circumstances, are allowed to unionize at the places where they are providing their services. We've seen that in the UK, Uber's license has come under fire. We've also seen that in Spain, Glover drivers, which are essentially the riders, our equivalent of FedEx on a platform, were deemed to be employees of Glover. Compare all that to what's happening in Africa. We have protected the independent contractor, and we have got a thriving functional outsourcing contractor model that none of the African jurisdictions have pierced. Coupled with that, we have a lot of innovation around entrepreneurship that is aiding the kind of future of work technologies that we need in our workplaces. Yeah. So for the first time you have, and particularly now with coronavirus, what you're seeing is that people have no geographical limitation to where they work in the African continent. And this is an amazing thing. At an event I attended last week, we have one of our biggest medical aid providers talking about, creating innovation hubs to ensure that entrepreneurial employees don't leave that workplace. They disrupt for the benefit of that workplace. And these are ideas that we've toyed with and didn't know where to place these sorts of skills some 5 to 7 years ago. Now what we're seeing is we're creating separate innovation hubs to accommodate them. And the last point I'll make before I hand over the mic to Emmanuel is that we're not scared by the 5 generations in the workplace. Africa, particularly South Africa, it's a very warm environment. It's a very accepting environment. We're very open to the disruption. And I think that what I see in my own space is the HR executives that I serve as external counsel are now no longer accepting the idea that we are the last point of call on the AI journey. The people journey must partner the AI journey. And if you want that collaboration, I as HR, as a strategic advisor, I need to be at that table. And that's a huge mindset change that brings across so much benefit for employees in the workplaces, because they are being factored into the journey before it's even started. And I think that's why we're seeing the buzz of the future of work, particularly in Southern Africa and SADC. We're seeing huge innovation and big strides happening.
Yeah, that's a huge change and a shift in mindset on how things were done previously and the new push that you are seeing today. Emmanuel?
Yes, from my end, to add to what Sherisa has just said, the mandate for chief HR officers today is a very tall order. So one, the first thing is that there is need for these chief HR officers to navigate around the ongoing disruption, because as you see technology coming into the workplace, being deployed, there's so much disruption that we are experiencing. So for the CHRO, one key responsibility of the CHRO is to see how do we navigate around all this disruption, okay? And in the course of navigating around this disruption, how do you then help to minimize organizational risk. Because as technology is deployed, there are several risks. One, you could have people losing their jobs, risk of people losing their job. You have risk of security. How do you ensure that the data that is being passed through the system is secure? So it's majorly all the people risk around this technology. There's need for the CHRO to be on top of his or her game to see how do we minimize these organizational risks. And then the other thing is to also understand the internal and external drivers of change. So as change is going on, there are certain things that drive change internally and externally. So is it the competition is doing something else? What do we need to do? Or the kind of people that we have internally, are they able to help the organization drive the goal, be able to get to where we want to get to? So these for me are the three key mandates that every CHRO should concern themselves with. And I think that the CHRO should actually begin to see themselves as the future of work experts. When they start doing all these things that they put in place, it makes it easier for them to be able to ensure that they have a place on the seats, at the table, to be able to deliberate on this issue. And currently, we also see that forward-thinking HR leaders today are beginning to apply advanced technologies, not only to analyze historic data, but they're beginning to use this historic data to also make predictions about the future. What are we going to do? How is the business? What sort of workforce are we going to have with the direction that the business is going? And then you begin to see so many initiatives coming up to be able to support the organization of tomorrow.
Yeah, it's there's always that fine line, right, for the CHRO, because the HR function is always, and then especially in certain countries in the African continent that are under economic stress at the moment, whereby they are always pushed to reduce costs, to optimize costs. Let's not use the word reduce, right? To optimize costs. So, and then at the same time, when they are trying to bring in technology into the business, and this is where establishing that balance between bringing in the technology and at the same time being pushed to optimize costs, and then eventually the organization ends up with laying off a lot of people as a result of that. So this is where the confusion comes of whether are we letting go of the people because we are adopting those new ways of working, and if we are, whose responsibility is it? So is it the individual's responsibility? Is it the company's responsibility? Did HR communicate this properly? And we see a lot of live cases today in some of the African countries. Specifically, I think Sherisa as well will expand on this. In South Africa, there have been some cases whereby that marrying this together, those two activities at the same time, and then it created a lot of insecurity and so lack of job security and safety. So what do you have to say about that, Sherisa, from your side?
That's so true. I think the starting point in that aspect of future of work is that in any revolution, there will be job loss. It's about the amount of blood that's shed. Now, in my own experience, the reason for the job loss is because it's either your future of work strategy has been proactive or been reactionary. Where we come in and it's proactive, we map out what's in the workplace, and we have budget allocated to upskill and reskill. And these are different things. Upskilling is different from reskilling. Reskilling says, I'm coming into a manufacturing environment, I'm going to put a robot there, or I'm going to put some kind of press there that's going to replace a line of 20 press operators. I'm going to run that across 5 lines, across 4 shifts, and ta-da, I have redundancies, right? In that scenario, where the HR strategy for future of work is proactive, we've already factored that in. We've already reskilled those people. McDonald's HR executive was saying, so McDonald's, the burger, the Happy Meal people, they were saying that what they've done is, because in South Africa we have McDonald's transport, so they were saying that what they did is they automated their entire guest experience, and they took the tellers out of there and they've made them guest experience liaisons across their restaurants. I don't know if they've been able to absorb everybody, but that was the comment that was made at the last conference. Now, the point is, you can proactively reskill low-end workers. I don't know, given the environment in South Africa, particularly, that it's possible to reskill everybody. Where there's opportunity is at middle-level employment up to C-suite, where you need those employees on a proactive and a reactionary solution to commit to a career of lifelong learning. And that commitment you need to get right at the outset of your rollout of future of work. Because if you don't get that right, what you're ultimately going to have is a state of incompatibility at some point, and they will end up leaving, or you would have wasted the investment into these people who are the people with the right skills but the wrong attitude. And a huge part of this, as we've been hearing in the other plenaries, is around not so much the IQ, but the EQ, the aptitude to commit to this career of lifelong learning. And that's a huge part in how you factor in who you upskill and who you reskill to avoid initial job loss, and secondly, job loss during the course of your future of work rollout. Because this is, we call it an agile workplace solution, because the disruption will constantly change, and you need the EQ to be dynamic and innovate and be agile enough to manage in this new working environment that you find yourself in.
Yeah, Emmanuel, on this note?
Yes, on this note, because the organizations will no longer rely on traditional workforce models, there's need for the people managers and the organization itself to begin to look at the models that we have currently in place, and then begin to design, just like Sherisa has talked about, agile organization. We need to have an agile organizational structure in place, because you now begin to have a mix of workforce from different areas. You have those who would either have to connect to work remotely, and then because of the type of technology we are also putting in place, different kind of skills will now be required. So there's need to ensure that the right kind of competencies are actually mapped out and are in place. When these competencies have been put in place, the next thing now is to begin to determine how do we get our people to be able to upskill, to fall in. And for those who eventually might not be able to upskill to continue, then what plans do we have for them? So I think there should be enough communication and transparency in the whole process. So if there's enough communication and transparency in the process, it makes it easier for those who would be able to move to join the future workforce, already know themselves. And for those who unfortunately will have to fall off, will also know, and then begin to think of what sort of alternative plans can we have for these ones that we need to let go. Is there a way we can help them as an organization or individually? And then by the time we begin to create this awareness of the direction where the company is going and sort of competencies that are required, I believe that the employees also will begin to see how can they develop themselves and not just remain, because the mode of work is beginning to change, and it's changing very fast and rapidly. So what can they do outside the support that the organization is providing individually? What sort of things can they begin to put in place to get themselves ready, and not just wait for the organization to be the one to tell them we need to move? For me, that's what I think needs to come to play.
Yeah, it's communication is really key in this situation, but as well taking a step back and having an overall holistic strategy on where we're heading in the next 3 to 5 years and how the business is dealing with it, and taking charge of and responsibility of the people that they have on board. And this as well will translate in greater confidence from the people and the employees in the organization. Because whenever they feel that they are taken care of, they themselves will also take charge of their own future in the company. Because there's, to be honest, I actually wrote an article about that. there's nothing worse than actually feeling helpless in an organization. And organizations that don't deal with the situation in the right manner, and we've seen a lot of them, live examples actually. This is when the people on the inside, they start feeling very helpless, and if they are feeling helpless, then there's less productivity, it will impact the operation, it will impact the business itself, and then eventually, whatever business strategy you put in place, it will eventually fail. So yeah, thanks a lot on this one. Now this is why I would like to take the conversation, let's just elevate it one notch higher, right? You know, some countries, and I would use the UAE and Dubai specifically in the Middle East, whereby in cases like that, it's the government that takes a charge and then eventually puts in all the regulatory framework that is required for all the other companies to follow, whether private or a public sector, right? But then they ensure that the message is going strong and everybody else is following. How do you see that happening in countries in Africa? Sherisa, I know individually we spoke about this, and then you mentioned as well some of the initiatives that are being done, and then Emmanuel as well, you spoke earlier on our individual conversation on some of the initiatives that were done in Nigeria. So how can we share this with the listeners on the branding out there, or the messaging might not be as strong as other countries, but there's a lot that is happening.
So, if I may, so as a starting point, in South Africa and in rest of Africa, we're essentially open for business. We're encouraging foreign direct investment, and the regulations, one might argue they're static, others might argue they're open. We have not inhibited, we have not stopped any kind of entrepreneurship initiatives in any of the jurisdictions. I went into Kigali and I was in and out in 3 days. I incorporated a company for a telco group, a multinational telco group. We opened 28 companies in the rest of Africa. Kigali was the easiest. We had bank accounts, we had lease agreements, we were in and out. The president welcomed the incorporation of the entity and the opening of the office. So maybe the message is not being publicized widely enough, but it's certainly there. The other point I wanted to make is that in South Africa, by example, Business Leadership South Africa, Business Unity South Africa, these are movements that are encouraging South Africa's middle class to become entrepreneurial. So in other words, we've always assumed that your skills just below your C-suite are aiming to take over the C-suite. But what we've actually found is that they actually want investment to go and create work in South Africa, but they don't have the ability to fundraise because they're working full-time jobs. And we haven't seen a lot of government investment into these kinds of accelerations. Now, the reality is our ecosystem in Africa is different in that we've got multinationals and we've got acceleration hubs, privatized entities coming in and incubating these very skills that we speak about, the middle class employees, the entrepreneurs, and we don't have what Singapore has. We don't have a Singapore Smart City Nation project. We don't have what the Bay Area has or the Valley has, in that a massive ecosystem for everybody to dip into and share lessons learned. But what we have is pockets of some serious excellence. And I think the one thing is for people listening to become more familiar and au fait with what kind of opportunities already exist. If I look at South Africa, in Cape Town, we have Silicon Cape, we have so many accelerators. We've got Founders Factory sitting in Johannesburg. We've got Alan Gray doing amazing things. We've got Remgro's just created the first fintech accelerator. We've got agri-tech, all sorts of hydroponic plants and activities going on. So coronavirus or not, whether you know about us or not, we're up and bubbly and thriving in Africa. I know a lot of the accelerators have gone into Kenya, Nigeria, Zambia, because there's a lot of mining activity, there's a lot of manufacturing activity, particularly now as activities move out of South Africa into Swaziland and Lesotho. I'm involved in lots of entrepreneurship and disruption there around automation and digitization of what was traditionally manufacturing plants in South Africa. So taking those things into account, the reality is government has not actively created a smart city nation project, which was the intention of our South African president when he came into power. And we've had other issues inhibiting that. We've had an energy crisis, we've had a water crisis. But I think the message to the rest of the world is that you shouldn't take lightly the impact of South Africa's tax-paying middle class. Our 41% tax bracket and our 45% tax bracket, coupled with the investment, the continued commitment of the multinationals in South Africa with footprints into rest of Africa, are keeping this continent up and well and thriving. And for that reason, you're seeing impressive innovation coming out of here. It was said at a conference I attended that you're never going to see the next Uber coming out of Africa. In my own experience, accelerating these entrepreneurs for investors, I don't know why that would be, because I think we might see something bigger than Uber coming out, because you've got a strong middle class saying, I have been taught in my lifespan not to rely on government processes or institutions. So I have been 135% independent, although a tax-paying citizen my entire life. So you've got people with the commitment and the drive and the kind of autonomy to actually make not just social impact, but global impact. So in my experience, no, we don't have the kind of public-private partnerships we should be seeing. But what we're seeing is a strong economy, pockets of excellence, I'd call it that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Emmanuel, on your side?
Yes, okay, so in Nigeria, there are some initiatives currently going on, and the government is also trying to play in that particular space by trying to come up with frameworks. Like we discussed previously, I talked about the government establishing a ministry for digital economy. So the thinking is to see how do we begin to ensure government is run using technology, and then how do we also begin to put frameworks around to ensure that there's a policy around the future of work and how it impacts the economy in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. Then the government is also trying to look at the ease of doing business and beginning to put measures in place to see how can we make it easy for people to do business. If you look at the recent Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement outside, it's to enable people to be able to move around within Africa. And so these are frameworks that the government of Africa is putting in place to see how they can tap into these digital economy or digital space, as you may, to ensure that we can maximize the potential and then ensure that we become a strong force in playing in this particular space. Yes, although the government is not doing as much as we want them to do, but you will also agree with me that the private sector, especially, are doing so much. If you take the city of Lagos, we have a lot of incubation companies where people, incubation hubs and centers where technology people are beginning to meet together and come up with several solutions, that will help improve the way we do things and run businesses across Nigeria and even globally. And they are beginning to make very strong impact. I've shared with you an example of some few case studies. One in agri, how technology is being used to drive agri, whereby you bring in the people who want to invest. You have farmers who want to farm, but they don't have enough resources to be able to farm. You now have a technology company that is sitting in between those who have the money, but they don't want to farm, but they want to make money out of farming. So they bring the funds, and then the farmers who have the land, or maybe they don't even have the land, but they're willing to farm. So this creates an opportunity for investors, creates an opportunity for the farmers, create an
Yes.
opportunity for those who also own the land. At the end of the day, what are we doing? We're creating more food, and food is growing. So you create so much food. There's also another case about what do you call it now? A blood bank. Okay? It's called a life bank. So this technology company, what is it doing? It's also trying to bring those who have need for blood and then match them with those who have the blood to sell or to give away or to donate the blood. So making sure that healthcare in terms of provision of blood is not scarce. So for areas where they don't have it, they're able to identify. So many things are actually going on within the space to ensure that we begin to maximize the potential of technology as we move into the future.
Look, it's you mentioned a couple of things actually. You mentioned new policies, and then to ensure compliance, but as well to protect the rights of everybody, right? It's how are we dealing with this from a governance perspective when it comes to the future of work? But as well, new ways of thinking and using technology and incorporating it in order to create opportunities. But look, I'm sure you agree with me that there's always this clash between the new ways of thinking and the old ways of thinking. And given the way that a lot of corporates are structured in Africa, and maybe as well some of the government entities, I'm sure that there is a lot of push for change. And on the other side, there's a lot of pushback, and very few might be willing to embrace a change. So the struggle there is actually real. So how do you think we can overcome those change obstacles? To embrace more technology, innovation, and then to basically go on full force, because right now the future of work is already here, as everybody says, but it's not that so the African countries are playing catch up, I would say, but they are going at a very high speed in order to play catch up. But how is it that are we going to manage this whole push back for change, or this whole conflict between old ways of working, new ways of working, especially from an HR perspective and from a people perspective? When you're managing an organization, or you are launching a new idea, or you're bringing in technology and creating opportunities, and then trying to get approvals. So how to do that? Emmanuel, you want to go on this one first? I know you're very passionate about this subject. So
I think for me, either as an organization or as a country or as a continent, there is need for us to begin to create a sense of urgency. Okay? Yes. Create a sense of urgency around the need for us to begin to adopt some of these technologies that will help us become better, and move away from the old, because the old ways of doing things sometimes could be very slow. And the new way makes life easy, and we're able to accomplish more. So one, we need to create a sense of urgency. Basically, I would say let's adopt the 8-step process of change as advocated by John Cotter. So the first one is talking about creating that sense of urgency. So let's create that sense of urgency, why we need it and why we need it now. So if we're able to do that, people will begin to know that we need to do this now, else we'll be left behind and the world will move forward, we're still not following. Then they need to put together either a think tank team that will help drive this project. So in an organization, we need to have a team. And the team should not just be selecting people from the top level, senior management. We need to get people from the bottom, to participate, because they will be the ones to spread the message when the time comes. So get those from the bottom, the middle, and have a sponsor at the top to ensure that when the ideas flow to the top, it's not stopped there. There's a sponsor who clears everything from the top. And then it needs for us also, after setting up a team, to ensure that we develop a change vision and strategy. What is the strategy? What is the vision? What do we really want to see happen? Okay, we put that in place. As soon as we put that in place, we begin now. You know, I talked about communication earlier. We need to ensure that we begin to make things happen, communicate to ensure that everyone in the team, in the organization understands what it is we want to do and why we want to do it. Okay?
Yes.
So if we say we want to do something and we don't know why, the motivation and commitment will not be there. So we need to ensure that everyone understands and then get them to buy in. And then when we've been able to get everyone to buy in, there is need to also ensure that we allocate responsibilities to people and make them accountable, empower them. So if they don't have the capacity, the wherewithal to be able to execute and deliver, let's empower them, ensure that we've equipped them enough to be able to deliver. So at the end of the day, they are not complaining, okay, I have so much things to deliver, but I don't have the skill to be able to do it. So let's empower them. And then as we go along this journey of getting ourselves ready or become technologically enabled, there's need for us to create some short wins. You know, don't just make it a very long project that at the end of the day we get tired and we don't see what we're celebrating. But if we create small projects that when we add them up, it gives us the big results. So when we do complete a small part of this particular project, we celebrate that win. So you see, people are gingered and want to continue to go along in that particular, because they can see, yes, there's a result. You know, we're seeing the impact of what we're doing, and we're celebrating that. And then there's need for us to also ensure that we don't, after these first successes, okay, then we have the first success, we don't just stop there, we ensure we continue to do more, like make change a habit. Okay? So that when we finish that particular, we deliver that project, we shouldn't just stop there. We should be thinking, what is the next new thing that we need to do? What is the next new thing? What is the next new product we need to bring? What's the next thing we need to roll out to become better than we were yesterday? So I think having this, following through this 8-step process would enable us to ensure there is no resistance. Okay? People buy and they're able to ensure that we are successful in implementing this change.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually, we forget that this is one of the biggest changes that an organization might go through, because they're going at full speed while they are with this change, while at the same time they are maintaining their operations. So they want to make sure that things are working and functioning, but they want to drive this change. And definitely alignment and communication and getting the buy-in, sharing the small successes, putting a sense of urgency and a plan, and driving it all the way from from the top as well would be really important. But I'm sure Sherisa will have something to say about pushback and how old ways of working are very much entrenched as well in a lot of corporates. Definitely having the right to process will help, but from an HR and people perspective, it must be tough. So how to make that happen?
So we found we've done a few future of work rollouts now, and we've done it across Middle East Africa. And it's strange because as much as you would know that the laws in Dubai are so different to the laws in South Africa, we had the same issues in each of the jurisdictions for different employers. One's logistics and one's retail. So I think the people component is a global issue. There were 3 easy low-hanging fruit that we started off with. The first thing is we made sure that our managers, so not just leaders, but the managers, that middle level I keep speaking about, that they were the right people to manage the employees we were trying to upskill, reskill, and retain ultimately. And that was the hardest challenge for us, because managers are not equipped to move from a space of subordination and control to ownership and accountability. And that is the biggest mindset change in this process. I found personally, as an employment lawyer, moving across the common law jurisdictions in Africa, that if you get that wrong, then you're not going to be able to, simple things. It plays out in things like, I don't trust you to work from home. It's like, well, why don't you trust me? How do we have an employment relationship if we don't have trust? You know,
Yeah.
it's so that's why it goes back to Mr. or Madam Manager, let me talk to you and let me read, because part of this is teaching them how to manage differently. And that's where we played around with platforms that allow people to work from home and have meetings from home, where managers could see on this workplace platform who's doing what where. There's someone that I worked with now, and I'm reaching out to him to introduce him to some of my clients. I forget the name of his platform. It's WURKR. And his platform, his name is Matthew, his platform essentially allows people, managers, to see who's talking to whom in the different virtual rooms, which are essentially virtual offices, which I think is goes a long way to placate the managers. That's the one low-hanging fruit. The other low-hanging fruit is, once you get that dialogue going, is to push remote working and flexible working. Now, these are two different things, and very often we assume that as HR and HR lawyers that the business we're speaking to understands the difference, but sometimes they don't. I'm saying remote working is your biggest winner for flexible parenting, flexible working for parents. No parent, husband, wife, mother, father, non-binary, is going to choose their work over their child. And that's the reality. And that's why we have in our workplaces, no matter how well we go and organically grow this workplace, a person becomes a parent and they're left with this fundamental ideological clash. So, and predominantly it's been the woman. So, you know, we talk about how we're encouraging interns and trainees who are young women to come in, and then we lose them. Well, buddy, you're losing them because you're not allowing them to be both mother and worker and further their career.
Yeah.
So that's the one. I mean, personally, it's the one thing that's kept me in practice for so long. I don't think I'm employable because I wouldn't work 8 to 5. I would work for as long as there is work. And that's something that people are not comfortable to hear, managers. So it's the managers, it's the remote working, it's the flexible working. And then you spoke about governance. A huge thing for us around governance is breaking down, park that, is taking what's worked and keeping that in place as sacrosanct. So your brand, your values, your code of conduct, your institutional memory held with tenured employees. Bravo, we celebrate that. But then we must augment that with new ideas. And in doing that, there needs to be buy-in that the new is not bad, it's good. So that's where Emmanuel's eight processes for change become so important.
Yes,
because
exactly.
we want to break down the silos. I don't like walking into a client workplace and seeing finance sitting with finance, HR sitting with HR. You know, it's this thing about you press a button on a lift and it takes you to this floor only. So we've stopped collaboration, so much so that we've stopped collaboration between the floors now as well. It's bizarre. When I went to the Bay Area and I went to Google X, the best thing I saw was the idea of silos and those things that don't exist. It's high energy collaborative workspaces. And the lady at Google X that hosted us says that if something doesn't work for one section, it might well be a hit in another. And that's why the collaboration becomes so important. And that's why I've tried to create a situation where I break down the idea that there are cost centers and there's business. Your next great innovation might come from your alleged cost centers, so let's not exclude them. So those were the 3 or 4 low-hanging fruit that I found address the issues around buy-in from business, and allow the rollout. You know, as Emmanuel says, we all start high energy, yes, and then 6-7 months down the line, you've had more meetings and less action around it. Worst thing ever.
It goes flat.
Yeah. We have more meetings about change and we don't change. It's my worst.
Yeah, that's true. Huh? Yeah, so it's funny. But let's on that same point that we are discussing. Let's and and this particular subject is a very hot topic in most of the African countries. And when we talk about improving the existing situation economically in the African countries, everyone turns to entrepreneurship. And as you said, Sherisa, earlier, is the next unicorn is going to come from Africa, or which country, or is it going to come from here? We don't even know. Some people challenge it, saying that it's not going to come from here. So whether it does or it doesn't, it's how are we enabling those entrepreneurs, given that they are at the heart of what is happening, right? So how are we enabling them from an ecosystem perspective, and from a future of work perspective? So how are we looking to bring onto this journey as well the group of people who have been excluded from this movement for a long period of time? And this is where it gets a bit more Africa specific. How are we gonna impact a lot of lives by enabling those entrepreneurs, by opening the doors of opportunities to a lot of people who have been excluded previously, and what is being done around it? So who would like to start on this one? I know you're going to fight on this one.
I'm being polite and waiting for Emmanuel.
Yes, you're waiting. Okay, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sherisa, you want to start?
Okay, cool. So you're right. Entrepreneurs there's been so much exclusion, not expressly, but tacitly, because employees have preferred to stay in corporates. So there's been a bias, unconscious, maybe conscious, who knows, against entrepreneurs. Our laws in South Africa allow SMME growth, small, medium, middle growth of entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of relaxation of the laws around them. So while we don't, there's a lot to be said about, and a lot has been written about what we don't have. What we do have is an environment for them to create their ecosystems. We also have a huge move by private companies, multinationals, South African companies alike, to create their own innovation hubs. Universities are also, UJ is doing amazing things to create innovation hubs for students, because a lot has been said about who says graduates need to go look for jobs. They should be creating work. We also have something called the YES Initiative, the Youth Employment Services Campaign, where we are allowing youth to get exposure in these companies doing these sorts of things for a fixed period of time, and we protect the company, that the company would not have to endure a claim for employment from these interns. It's more just training and exposure to make them employable after the fact. Now, with all this being said, we also have entrepreneurs who are A, scalable, or B, have been scaled. And these people are creating maybe not employment, but work. And in our country, in our continent, we accept the distinction between employment and work as being a real one, as the global ecosystem for future of work has embraced. So we're seeing entrepreneurs create a number of business opportunity circles where they're giving back. And they're mentoring these up-and-coming people. We're seeing multinationals and South African corporates and African companies alike creating opportunity for these people to service them through innovation, through projects, through the innovation hubs, acceleration hubs, etc. And we're seeing more and more investment, particularly in South Africa, by companies like Founders Factory, etc., where we are creating good, scalable or scaled entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And as a result, it's not just that there's activity, it's that there's a buzz around it. I don't think graduates are concerned around getting work so much so as they are concerned about coming up with the next greatest idea, because they all seem to now want to move away from, getting graduate or internships to wanting to be incubated and be their own bosses from day one. So we're now trying to manage a situation where we're saying to youngsters, I know you're clever and I know you have great ideas, and I'm sure that when you pitch us, we'll all be wowed, but you do need a little bit of training and exposure to the business world. And private business is looking with circumspection, because whilst they are great ideas, the problem you have is that these guys also need a little bit of coaching and mentoring. And we're seeing the rise in the number of coaches and mentors come in saying, let me coach you. Things like B2B offerings, they need to understand the context of that. The other thing is around speaking business lingo and understanding that creativity and boom can be channeled, but we all know the process to creation and to going live isn't overnight. So we're experiencing that as well. And we experience it in varied levels based on the different sectors. Fintech is bubbling, agri-tech is bubbling, but it's all nuanced to the sector. And I think that the issues we see as South Africa, or even as Africa in the sector, are global problems. I don't think that it's something that's specific to South Africa, because these sectors are independent, thriving sectors on their own.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Sherisa. Emmanuel, on this one?
Yes, so in addition to what Sherisa has shared, in the country, aside from the several innovation hubs that is incubating all these entrepreneurs, supporting them in also providing some sort of mentoring, guidance.
Emmanuel, on this one?
So I recall there was one of the Innovation Hub events that I attended, where mentors were identified from different areas of business to help these entrepreneurs who are in this particular innovation hub to ensure that they've been able to figure out how to ensure that the product that they've come up with will be such that will be able to meet the need in the market, look at their systems to ensure that they have the right type of systems in place, even though they are small, maybe you just have the founders, 1 or 2 or 3 people who are setting up this particular business, but that they have access to resources that will enable them to ensure that they put in the right system, so that when of mileage that they're able to scale, and not scale to fall or scale to grow. Then from the government side also, the government is also doing a lot to support entrepreneurs. This year, there was the Finance Act that was signed in Nigeria. That Finance Act provided for some sort of tax relief for businesses whose turnover is at a lower level. So to ensure that they are not burdened with so much tax. And then the government also have set up a fund called the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Fund. So this is to enable these entrepreneurs to be able to access funds at a single-digit interest rate, so that this will help them to be able to grow their business when they need access to finance. And there are several other development funds that the government is also putting in place to ensure that they support all these small-scale and micro entrepreneurs who are coming up. And then because of the lots of innovation hubs that we have around, encouraging challenge, and we have them going to schools to encourage people who are in school to come up with ideas, and then see how we can translate that idea to solve a need in their locality. And then for those who come up with the very best ideas, they are rewarded, they get a grant to enable them going to actually put into practice what they've shared. And then this is measured, and as soon as the impact is measured and we see that it's successful, they also have opportunity to gain additional grant, to be able to scale this and make it something very big, not just only within Nigeria, but we've seen such small scale entrepreneurship businesses coming up and then scaling to the point that they're beginning to serve the whole of Africa, and then some of them might be going outside Africa, making waves. So these are some of the ways the government and the private institutions, private organizations are supporting entrepreneurs?
No, definitely. There's a lot that is happening to um, enable all of this young generation to learn a bit more about the workplace. There's a lot of offerings when it comes from corporates on management programs, where they get through a management program for a year or two that is fully paid, that gives them a taste of what it means to work in a business environment. And a lot of them as well, they go straight into the incubators because they do have their ideas. They try to make it, they try to understand it in a business context, how scalable it is, how viable it is, etc. And the funding is there for the right ideas. So there's a lot of that is happening in this space. I would like to add as well the opportunities that the gig economy is offering, but as well for professionals from a platform economy perspective, whereby it's opening doors for opportunities for people everywhere around the world. And specifically for countries like South Africa, like Nigeria, like other African countries, where there's a lot of talent, but as well there's a young generation, but there's an aging generation that has a lot of skills, and just opening the doors of opportunities for them to be able to work on projects virtually. This will alleviate a bit from the economic pressure that is happening when this aging population moves into retirement. And if they are still able to earn while they are with their families, if they're working on projects virtually, this will have a great impact. It alleviates that pressure on their family and their kids to support them. And lots of them as well are still supporting their own parents, given the African culture as we know it. So it's like a no-brainer. It's a great opportunity. It reduces the pressure on creating jobs locally and opens doors for opportunities worldwide. So I'm personally very passionate about this. I'm conscious as well that we only have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna ask each one of you to tell me if there was one thing that you would really love to see more of to drive the future of work on Africa. What would that be? And Sherisa, you want to jump in on this one?
I would say, and you'd never guess that I'm a feminist as I say this, we should not be afraid to ask. Ask for a seat at the table, ask for an innovation, ask for a reasonable accommodation that might push your reasonable work agenda. If you ask, you will push the boundaries and you will make it possible for others to see the possibilities that you do.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, so for me, one thing that I would like to see is the need for us to reform our country's education system. So there's need to have both the government and the private sector to invest in reforming our education, country's education system, to ensure that people are acquiring the right type of skills, okay, that will enable them to function in this gig economy. Because when they acquire the right skill, it makes it easy for them to become relevant and not just letters. So that element of fear of we're adopting technology and am I going to lose out will now be eliminated. So if the education, people go through school and they come out of school, what they are taught in school is applying, it's applicable to what you see in the field of work. It makes it easier. So education for me is very key. So there's need for the private sector and the government to see how they can
partner together on this one.
Yes, on this one. That's one thing.
Yes, that's amazing. So taking a step back and preparing all of those kids that are in school today for the future of work. So it actually makes no sense to create hundreds of jobs that are in technology when you don't have anybody to fill them, and then you eventually have to outsource talent from outside of Africa while you have a lot of people that are unemployed. So taking a step back and then working on this at its core from the start of it when they are much younger. So thank you guys, thanks a lot. It's really a pleasure to be facilitating this panel. I'm very happy and proud that One Circle was one of the sponsors to make this event really accessible to everybody and as well for free. So thanks a lot to the Hacking HR community, and thanks to Enrique. And I would like to thank you as well, and to thank the listeners, especially the listeners who stayed up at night from the other side of the world in order to watch us and to get insights onto the future of work in Africa. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
and I agree.
Thank you.